And bellying up to 9-foot homemade oak bar. My name is Craig Toth, your host of Minor League News and Brews, talking about everything around the Pirates minor league system and giving you some beer reviews at the end of the show. This week, we are going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates positional player tool grades, and that is a mouthful to say the least. But before we get to that, there was a very interesting article and then a follow-up article by J.J. Cooper over at Baseball America talking about some changes coming to the Florida and Arizona Complex League schedules. This isn't something that falls on a ton of people's radars, but for a person who is a huge fan of the minor leagues, as if you're listening to this, you probably are as well. It's something that definitely caught my eye, caught our eyes. So I wanted to address it to a certain degree here. Laying out what the schedule looked like in 2023, started on June 5th, ended on August 22nd. The change that is being made for 2024 is that the season will begin on May 4th and end on July 25th. There was a big discussion, and I think I may have even briefly mentioned this in a previous episode concerning the new roster limits for players that you can have in your organization. It used to be 180 in season, 190 in the off season. Seen the one in the off season go down to 175. The new one for in season is going to be 165. So definitely cutting down on the number of players that you can have in your organization. That was discussed concerning players signing minor league deals. Obviously, the Pirates have made a decent amount of minor league signings, but there are a lot of players still out there in major league free agency, some that will still sign major league deals, others that will sign minor league deals. Some of the stuff that was discussed concerning the benefits of this schedule change, the biggest thing I saw mentioned was a cooler month in Arizona in May, as opposed to playing some of those games in August, when the difference in temperature is, instead of playing in 94 degree heat, that dry heat, quote unquote dry heat, you'll be playing in, 115 degree dry heat. So that was something that was brought up a decent amount. Talked about the concerns that people had. A lot of people said, you're going to see more prep players elevated quicker to the low A, maybe I wouldn't say high A, but the low A ranks instead of getting started in the Florida Complex League. And this kind of goes back to a discussion that we've been having since 2020, 2021, with the elimination of the advanced rookie ball, which would have been the Bristol Pirates for your Pittsburgh Pirates. Also, one of my favorite teams, the short season low A, that was the West Virginia Black Bears, which are now part of the MLB Draft League. But in that first article, J.J. Cooper discusses they could still have some unofficial games that would occur after the draft, because the season is ending, shortly after the draft. Don't know exactly when the players would actually get inked, when they would show up, but wouldn't leave time, for those high school and prep arms or batters to play very much, but you could have these unofficial games where you could roll innings, where basically you want to see a pitcher throw so many different pitches, and if he reaches a limit or is struggling or anything like that, you can just basically end the inning whenever you want to. You can call the game whenever you want to. You don't have to play a certain amount of innings. And for anybody that has been, to Pirate City during spring training, the minor league players, participate in these, all the time. They'll say they're, quote unquote, 3-inning games, but a lot of times you're not seeing, 3 full innings of ball. You may see, a pitcher, work on something, and then, there are umpires and everything, so there are some rules, but they kind of said that this would be the U.S. version of the Tricky League that used to exist in the Dominican Republic. And also they said these games could be, if you just kind of run out of arms, if you don't have, as many guys that you want to pitch that day, you kind of just end the game early. It's not, it's still professional baseball to a degree. It's more of, like I said, like a spring training or an instructs type thing. But you're still getting to play against, certain players. So yeah, obviously it kind of hurts me that there are some questions and concerns about this, and that, you won't see those players go into that. But J.J. Cooper did a follow-up article. Anybody who hasn't, go, read these over at Baseball America. It does require a subscription, but the subscription is well worth it, not only for these 2 articles, but for, many other reasons. Followed up on this a little bit, and, I'm just going to point out some stats that he, referred to in this article, and that it was like less than 35% of college hitters prior to 2021 made it to full season ball in their draft year. A lot of times they spent that in the short season affiliates. I talked about when I went to go down to see the West Virginia Black Bear games, I would go down there to see, players on rehabs at times, but also to see, the college hitters that the Pirates had drafted, just a few weeks before that. So, it wasn't like that was happening. But since the changes we talked about, those leagues being eliminated, the MLB quote-unquote takeover of the minors, more than 70% of college hitters drafted reached full season ball in their draft year. So, a lot of these things have kind of already been happening. So with the FCL not being there after the draft, a lot of those changes have already started to take place. He also said that for most of the 21st century, only 5 to 6% of prep hitters, high school hitters, that were drafted would make it into full season ball in their draft year. And last year it was 25.5% of prep bats made it to full season ball. So once again, there's already been that increase even before the changes to the FCL schedule, the ACL schedule. But the biggest thing to me here is that, a lot of times, because he mentions, go read this, prep pitchers as well, college pitchers. A lot of times, we've seen, especially, with Ben Cherington, is you may not even see these pitchers, whatsoever after they're drafted, just because of the number of innings they may have pitched, especially for college pitchers. You may see them in limited work, but not really like a ton. Even a 1-1 overall, and Paul Skeens saw, just under 7 innings of work. Obviously his was not just at, the lower levels. He worked his way into the upper minors in Double-A Altoona. But a lot of times, you kind of just get a pitcher in, may pitch in some fall instructional stuff. But, I mean, they've already probably had a decent amount of innings on their arms. And even if they really hadn't, a lot of times I wouldn't say that they're quote unquote shut down, but they're not pitching in any, professional capacity beyond, kind of some backfield stuff, which would go back to those unofficial games. So yes, I mean, nobody likes change. I think that at some point in time, moving forward, we won't even really notice this. I mean, like I said, miss the West Virginia Black Bears being a part of the Pirates organization. But, I mean, even with that, it's something that I look back on fondly, and that when I'm talking about the Pirates minor leagues, it's just so easy to talk about the 4 levels and then the Florida Complex League without even really slipping up and mentioning those, like I did when it first happened. So, like I said, go read these articles, think for yourself and, form your own opinion on that. But I wanted to put that out before I got into the top tools for the position players. I don't think I'm allowed to break these down into segments anymore because everybody that knows me, I end up rambling for that first segment. I wanted to get to the position players for this episode, going through the grades. Once again, I do look at the grades, but I kind of put them into tiers. It's nice to just kind of like see where the separation is, instead of seeing like a grade kind of behind it. And I also look at performance. If you go into the prospect sites, you're going to see position players graded out, not only, at the plate, but also, in the field. You'll see the hit tool. You'll see power. You will see run. You will see arm. You will see field. And finally, the overall grade. So it's not even just, at the plate as far as, just one thing. You got the hit and, the power. And then once they get on the base pass with, the speed, the running, and even in the field, it's like, well, they might not be the greatest fielder, but they may have a ridiculous arm. So, sometimes that can make up for it. Sometimes it causes more problems if a player is rushing, and even though they have a very strong arm, may overthrow, may throw in the dirt, different things like that. But I'm going to start with the obvious, and that is the hit tool. For the Pirates, there is one player who is in the first tier that is, not head and shoulders above every other player, but is in a category all of his own. That is Termarr Johnson. Speaking with Jeffrey Paternostro from Baseball Prospectus, go back and listen to that episode. Talked about, something that I had heard previously. I believe it was on Baseball America's podcast, and some, reading and research and discussing and talking to some scouts that I did, that there was like a balance between Termarr Johnson where they could see, maybe the hit tool coming up a little bit, the power going down, maybe seeing the power go up like it did last year and seeing the hit go down a little bit, or if he could find that little bit of a gray area where he could have, a hit and a power tool. I mean, both of them are obviously above average, 50 being the average on the 20 to 80 scale, but that, one of them could go higher above average and the other one could drop closer to 50, not necessarily being an average, hit or power tool. But for right now, Termarr Johnson is in a league of his own. The next one, also kind of in a tier of his own, in tier 2, is Mitch Jebb. Last year, if you're looking at average, you're looking at the hit tool, hit 295 in low A Bradenton after being drafted. Was shown up a little bit by Mr. McAdoo with a 302 average. Kind of came out a little bit of nowhere. Mitch Jebb has that very funky swing, but it works for him. I mean, that's why, when I was a younger person, when I used to play the home run derby of wiffle ball in the backyard with my friends, we would do like a Julio Franco stance for Pirates fans. Orlando Merced was one that I would go to just a little bit of a funky thing to it, and the way he's set up. But Mitch Jebb, it's obviously working for him. Definitely has the good hit tool, hit for average. Came out and had just a good season. We're talking about a player recently drafted and going straight into the low A part of the organization. Did very well. The next tier is Sung-Chae Chang. No real surprise there for me. The one surprise was Garrett Forrester. I knew he was a pretty good hitter. Didn't know exactly how good of a hitter he was, but good to know that that's where he's rated at right now. Looking forward to where he would be. I think he's a player that was mentioned by Michael when I was on one of the longest podcast episodes I've ever been on, which was completely my fault. 412 Double Play podcast from this past week. Go listen to that as well. But Forrester was somebody that was brought up. And for the best of the rest, I wouldn't really call it like maybe a fourth tier, but I have Yordani De Los Santos, Jack Brannigan, Shaylin Polanco, kind of where their grading is at there. But those are the guys with the hit tool. On to the power. Tamar's back up there as well. Already talked about, maybe sold out for a little bit of power last year. Something that definitely happens to players when they are in Greensboro, just because everybody loves the long ball, and you can sell out for a little bit of power. And even if it's not, getting a complete barrel on the ball, that you could end up putting it out there just because of the bandbox that they play in, the other small fields that they play with in the Sally League. In Tier 2, Garrett Forrester pops back up. Lonnie White Jr., man, can he just stay healthy this season? Would be so happy. Matt Gorski comes into that, a very young man, but a very large man. And Tony Blanco Jr., Malcolm Nunez, and Shawnee Severino, just recently acquired this past year from the Milwaukee Brewers. Big international signing for them now in the Pirates system. To look at the power, just as far as home runs throughout the system, the leaders for the Pirates last year in the minor leagues, Jace Bowen with 23, Rodolfo Nolasco down in low A Bradenton with 20, Matt Gorski with 20, Jack Brannigan with 19, and Termar Johnson with 18. With Jace, with Jack, and with Termar, I'm wondering how much of the Greensboro effect is in play there. Gorski did not have that great of a season last year, but definitely did show some of the power. Guys, he's super athletic. I think he's just a really good player. Had the unfortunate injury the year before. Came back and just didn't have the greatest season, but was able to put 20 out. Now, as far as speed goes here, I was actually I wouldn't say shocked by this one, but I definitely thought I would see some other players in Tier 1. In Tier 1 right now, by himself, Lonnie White Jr., in Tier 2, Shaylin Polanco and Manuel Torrero, Estar Suero, and Sung-Chae Chang. Looking at some of the stolen base and caught stealing within the minor leagues last year. And sometimes it is easier to, steal in the minor leagues just because pitchers haven't, they're working on some stuff, haven't, perfected the delivery. They, maybe pick off moves, different stuff like that. But I just kind of wanted to see where, the Pirates stood. And these are the guys that were, towards the top of the steals. It was Jace Bowen with 26, Sung-Chae Chang with 26, Jack Brannigan with 24. Going up the list a little bit is Trace Gonzalez with 28 and Mike Jarvis with 31. And kind of like when you I looked at the other side as well, because we all know that, G1 Bay is fast as all get out. And, the first month of the season had, great success on the base pass. If he made it to first base, there was a pretty good chance that he's going all the way to third base, but then, saw him getting picked off and, getting caught stealing. And it just, speed is not everything. So I kind of wanted to look as, Jace Bowen had 26 stolen bases, but was caught stealing 6 times. Sung-Chae Chang had 26 stolen bases, but was caught 12 times. Jack Brannigan, 24 stolen bases, caught 3 times. Trace Gonzalez, 28 stolen bases, caught 8 times. And this one really stuck out to me because a lot of people are like, okay, if you try to steal more, you're obviously going to get caught stealing more. So what's that number really look like? Mike Jarvis had 32 attempts and had 31 stolen bases. He was only caught stealing 1 time. So, take it for what it's worth, what you will with those ones. Going on to, moving out into the field, off of, out of the batter's box, off of the base pass, going to the arm. This one, really no surprise whatsoever. Jack Brannigan, and you're going to see him in the tier 1, in the arm, in the fielding. I've heard it compared to, and him compared to, within the Pirates system, Jared Triolo, going to be like, he could be a Gold Glove, third baseman, shortstop. It's a guy that is just really good, and has that strong arm to go with it. Tier 2, as far as the arm, is Shawnee Severino. Tier 3 is Jace Bowen. And this one might be a big surprise to you, is Malcolm Nunez. Nunez had been moved off of third base, something I've brought up before. Moved off of third base when he was with St. Louis. They have a pretty good third baseman there by the name of Nolan Arenado. Kind of comes to Pittsburgh. Pirates also have a good third baseman who's ahead of him in Cabrian Hayes, Jared Triolo ahead of him as well, trying some, first base. But the one thing with him, and I think I mentioned this before, is, go back and look at spring training from last year and him playing, third base when he showed up. Guy's got some good feet, got good defense, good arm. So, might be a surprise to some people. I knew the defense was a little bit of a surprise to me with the arm. But moving to the fielding, as previously mentioned, Jack Brannigan. Tier 2, Lonnie White Jr. Once again, I will say this, please stay healthy this year. Tier 3 is Chang, Polanco, and Termar. Termar, probably going to be a second baseman. But as far as second basemen go, is already, a pretty good fielder, and there's nothing wrong with that. Overall, it's kind of like, as far as the hitters, there's not a lot of hitters towards the top, man. It's kind of gotten crazy. We have so many pitchers now with the number of hitters that have graduated. Something I talked about last week when I was doing, grading out the pitching prospects within the Pirates minor league system. And right now, it's like kind of like, Termar Johnson, and then there's like, what's that called? The ellipsis, like the ... Then there's Mitch Jebb. Then the ... and, Yordani De Los Santos. And it's not saying that the other players I didn't mention, won't make it, won't have, major league careers or whatever, but it's just kind of crazy to see how much the Pirates farm system has changed. And the big thing about this is that, those guys that are kind of towards the top, like none of them are, they're not in AAA. We don't have like those top prospects towards the top of the system. I mean, Tamar could start in Altoona, but I'm not really sure. He didn't make it to Greensboro because as soon as some thought he might because of the injury he suffered at the beginning of last year. Mitch Jebb could move throughout the system as a college bat, but nobody really in AAA. And then Yordani De Los Santos was in the FCL and then, came up to Bradenton. And that's kind of the person I want to end this on right here. And it's not like to say that it's a negative note because, Yordani is absolutely extremely young. In the FCL, 78 plate appearances / 328, 397, 463, good for a 126 WRC plus. Moved up to Bradenton, had 153 plate appearances there, 184, 322, 256, good for a 72 WRC plus. The one thing I will say about his time in Bradenton is his walk rate. It was 14.4%. It's a very good thing to see. But the K rate was 32.9%. Wanted to end on a positive note there. Extremely young. Looking forward to what he can do. Once again, Lonnie White Jr., please stay healthy. Could be just a very big impact player. An outfielder, not something that our system is completely packed with anymore. But coming next week, going to be starting the preview series for all 4 levels of the Pirates minor leagues. Going to be beginning with the Indianapolis Indians. I believe last year I went from Bradenton up. Say it all begins in Bradenton, just due to scheduling with myself, with the great guys, the broadcasters, and different people I'll have on to discuss each of those levels. It just kind of worked out a little bit better to start with Indianapolis this year. Really looking forward to getting into that. Can't wait to talk to Jack McMullen from the Indianapolis Indians broadcaster out there from Just Baseball Media, doing great stuff over there. Man, I can't wait for baseball season to really, really get started.
A pitcher of beer, a pitcher of beer. Let's order another pitcher of beer. That pitcher of beer should come over here. I love that pitcher of beer.
This week, as far as beers go, I'm going with one that I hadn't even heard of this brewery before, but it kind of really caught my eye. It was the Captain Lawrence Brewery. It's up in New York. I call it the Cap Larry. I think that's why, for some reason in my head, as soon as I saw Captain Lawrence, I was like, I don't know, like Captain Larry Brewing, but it is Captain Lawrence Brewing. Had 4 pretty good and interesting beers. Had a Northeast Hazy IPA, a regular IPA, a Kolsch, and a lager. So it had a nice selection in their variety pack there. Starting off with their classic lager coming in at 4.2%. Gave that one a 425, move it down to 375. Surprisingly, because I mentioned Hazy and I mentioned another IPA, my favorite of the bunch was their Clear Water Kolsch, coming in at 4.8% ABV. Give that one a 450, knock it down to 400. The Hop Commander IPA, and this is hot. This is a Hop Commander. I mean, it feels like you're either just inhaling straight hops or chewing on hops. I mean, it is hoppy. Comes in at 6.5%, which was a little bit lighter of an lower of an ABV than I thought it was going to be based on the original taste. Give that one a 400, bring it down to 350. And finally, the Citra Dreams Northeast Hazy IPA. Thought this one was going to be my favorite. Maybe it's the percentage. It was. I told you before, some of those I like kind of more of the lower ones, a little bit lighter ones. This one came in at 7%. Still gave it a 425. Knock it down to 375. That is Captain Lawrence Brewing. A very, very good pack there. Has something for everybody. It's not just like a regular, like IPA pack or anything. So go out and try that one. And come back next week to hear Jack McMullen help me preview the Indianapolis Indians season.